Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Bruno Gaussorgues, who is the country head of Societe Generale. Bruno, thank you very much. For some people may not know what the main business is for Societe Generale in Japan. So just very briefly, what is the main business that you're doing here in this country?
Societe Generale is mainly wholesale banking in Japan. With two main activities: global market, standard capital market activities across all asset class, fixed income and equity mainly, and financing activity, i.e. Financing project or assets like real estate or aviation finance or export finance.
And been in Japan a long time, I think.
Yes, more or less, since 2021.
Yeah.
So it's not that long.
It's not that long, I guess, yeah, still. So for you, let's talk a little bit about how you got to be in Japan. So take us back a little bit into your background, you know, where you started in your career and how you got to become the country head of Japan. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I started my career, all my career has been in the banking industry. All my career has been around global market activities, but mainly on the risk management side. I started on the risk some time ago, only in French bank, starting by what we called Crédit Lyonnais, which has disappeared today because it has been absorbed by Crédit Agricole. So worked for Crédit Agricole, Natixis, and I joined Societe Generale in 2010, still on the risk side, market risk. So both a very specialized type of background, but in different organizations. I spent also 7 years in London on top of being mainly based in Paris. After 25 years around of doing risk management, I wanted to explore, frankly, risk, you could do several lives in risk. It's a wonderful type of job. Every day is different. So I really enjoy it, but there was the COVID crisis. We went through a very, very complicated time during the crisis, which we managed to manage. And at the end, going out from this COVID crisis, my feeling was that, okay, now I think I've experienced most of what this kind of job can offer. So I would like to try something else and perhaps to be more on the business side. And potentially, if there is an occasion or an opportunity, more on international side. And it happens that the position in Japan was available. So I applied. And it worked. And I was being a strong attraction to Asia in general and Japan in particular. So it was a perfect match.
Perfect match. And what year did you arrive here? Which year did you come to Japan?
So I arrived in 2021, late 2021. It was still COVID time in Japan. Actually, the borders were still closed. So we managed to get an exemption, which took a couple of months to get in. But when we arrived, we were the only one. It happens that the plane, I thought that Japan was closed. The plane was full of European people when we took off from Paris. So I said, it's closed or it's not closed. We arrived at Haneda Airport, but we were only 4 to get off the plane.
Because
the plane was pursuing to New Caledonia. That's why there were a lot of European type of people. So we are only 4 to get off the plane. There were roughly 60 people waiting for us to go through all the sanitary.
That's a hell of a long trip, though, to get to New Caledonia, to fly from Europe to Tokyo, then down to, I guess, Australia, and then across to New Caledonia.
I think they go directly to New
Caledonia. They go directly?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been in New Caledonia. That's a long way away.
It's
like Australia's a long way away. And so you said 2021. Was the branch already open when you arrived in 2021?
Yes, the setup was already there. We have been in Japan for 50 years.
50 years, that's what I thought.
1973.
Yeah, I thought they had a history there.
So the setup was in place. We have actually 4 entities, the main one being the securities for global market and the branch for more banking-based business. We have also an asset management arm.
So, coming from a background where you spent time, working internationally in Europe, in London for many years, and then, in France in different organizations, but still basically the same business area. And then you turn up in Japan. So what were some things that you noticed when you got here, you thought, oh, that's a bit different to what I'm used to, or this is a little bit different to what I expected, or, positive or negative, it doesn't matter. What were some sort of differences that stood out for you when you first arrived?
When I first arrived, it was COVID time, so I started by 2 weeks of quarantine. So not much you can make in terms of observation. But it happens that 5 years before, we came in Japan for holidays.
Ah, okay.
When I say attraction to the country, it's not a small word. I really wanted. I discovered the country through business trip since the early 2000s, but my family didn't know, and I really wanted them to discover. So we took quite a French type of holidays, 3 weeks.
Very nice.
We
Australia.
are French.
That's Australia too, French. Don't worry. 3 weeks is no problem. Yeah.
And actually, my family discovered and loved the country. Really? I love everything. I love the food, I love the people, I love the culture. So for me, I was not really surprised per se when I arrived in Japan. And on top of that, we were quite well prepared by the company. Alors, you could say it's very short, but actually it worked well. We did have 1 day of cultural training.
Here
in Paris.
In Paris, okay.
In
before
Paris,
you came,
but from someone French, but who has lived a lot. I think he was working for Nissan, so lived a very long time in Japan. The training was mainly about the professional environment. How you should deal in terms of interaction, understand the people. You could feel that 1 day is very short to understand the country. When you arrive, you discover that even several lives will not be enough to just touch the surface of it. But still, it allowed me, I think, to avoid the biggest mistakes. And I think it was very useful. So to some extent, I was not surprised by what I discovered when I arrived in Japan. Of course, every day I'm learning something about the country, and it will carry on like that for some time still. But well, I knew a little bit what I should do. I had also a lot of discussion with my predecessor, who is French as well. He spent 5 years here. So when you group everything together, prior contact, plus desk training, plus good interaction with my predecessor, actually, I think, I hope, it's my feeling that I adapted quite well to that country.
What did your predecessor say to you in terms of advice as being the leader of the organization in Japan? What things did he think were important to tell you?
It was mainly about, of course, he went through description of the business, the people, and so on. But in terms of the main advice, I would say 2, and I will keep this advice for my successor. The first one is the decision-making process. In France, and especially it was my way. I think when I will be back in France, it will still be my way of working. I love to be in brainstorming session, collective discussion, challenging each other in order to
very
come
French,
up.
French methodology.
We have done several revolutions, so we need to leverage on that. So a lot of exchange to come up with a kind of consensus, and we not hesitate to challenge each other. So he told me, you forget about that here. You forget about the collective decision-making process. When you arrive at your exco or your board or your manco, it's just a kind of tick the box type of validation. You should ensure prior to the meeting, that everybody is aligned, that you have discussed. And so, and actually, yes, when I try to emulate some discussion during a big forum, it went nowhere, and it's still going nowhere. I'm still trying by time to time, but it's still going nowhere. And then therefore, the second advice is do not hesitate to multiply the one-to-one. Because when actually you create this kind of trust or exchange face-to-face, it's quite open discussion usually. And you hear a lot of things that they will never express in public, although public is private.
In the big meeting,
okay, it's a lot of time. It's really a multiplication of one-to-one, some formal, some going for a nice drink or something like that, but it works at the end. I get the information I need, I can cross the information I need, I can generate or push for a decision or consensus, and when we arrive at the meeting, yes, actually everything is done.
Smooth.
Everything is done.
Yeah, that was good advice from your predecessor, I have to say, very good advice actually. And in terms of, based on your long career of leading different teams in different countries, like England and France, etc., and particularly Japan, what have you found has worked well to get people engaged to follow you as the leader?
To be honest, it's not that different from other jurisdictions or other countries where I had to work. At the end, if you want to embark people, first you need to trust them. And second, you need to leave them space to express their view. Because while they will execute the best, will be their own idea. And if you remember that I arrived in this country without knowing nothing in terms of business we are doing here and so on, they know. They have been here for sometimes decades. They have been here for a lot of time, so they know plenty of things I don't know. Of course, I bring my experience from Paris, my network from Paris as well, which is very important because you need to navigate within the group. But on the ground, they are much better than me. So and it's the way I work anyway. So I leave them the floor. I leave them one-to-one, not in a meeting, of course. We are back to the previous point. But then, because I arrive, because they want to say a few things and they want to get a footprint on what they are doing, they are going to express a lot of things. And if you are able, and I think it's one of the quality, I am very analytical. I can get, if you are able to make a summary of that or to put it together, actually, very quickly, you can come up with ideas and strategic type of plan for the country. But, and then you can go through validation steps with the region, with the group. And if you are validated on your strategic review, then you will have to execute. But at the end, you will execute what they initially proposed. And that's, for engagement, is the main thing for me. And I managed to bring that together, to push that to the group, to the headquarters, but it's their idea.
Do you have cases where sometimes maybe the group has a certain view on how things should work, but the Japan team thinks, well, this is Japan, it doesn't quite fit, or it's not the best solution for us, but you have to follow the central command's directive, and then you have to sell, I guess, to the Japanese team that, well, look, we understand your viewpoint. However, we're not going to go that route. We're going to have to go this route instead. Does that come up, and is that difficult to get them to accept that they can't have the control over the direction in Japan?
They have been working for Societe Generale for a long time, so they didn't wait for me to understand that. So I think they have completely integrated that. After that, I believe what they can expect from me is, if it goes really against the interest of the platform, because I am from the headquarters, but because also I'm French, I will be able to stand for them. So that's what they expect. But they will also understand that in some instances, we are part of the group, so we have to contribute to global policies and to global effort and so that. And provided that they trust me on my capacity to stand for when it is required, I think they will understand and they will follow. Of course, you need to do a lot of pedagogy, to explain a lot. But I've never seen a situation where they were completely not understanding the rationale of the decision, because there is always a rationale at the end.
There's always a reason, right? It's not just a flippant thing.
Exactly. So you are always able to explain and to put the rationale. After that, you agree or you don't agree, but you understand. So it's quite smooth. And even sometimes myself, I'm not sure to agree on everything, what the headquarters is asking me to do. But here, globally, provided that you have created this kind of trusting type of environment, it's quite smooth, even when decisions are difficult ones, and we do have some, or are complicated to apply in our environment. But at the same time, we have also several examples where the initial decision was clearly not making much sense because of what we are in Japan, because of Japan, because of our clients, or because
regulations are different.
Regulation, they will understand quickly. They will challenge a little bit, but they will understand quickly. But when it is more soft type of problems on the way you have to speak to clients,
more gray area,
exactly, or the way you should consider the relation, or yes, we need to explain, and we have managed to reverse in some instances decision which frankly was not adapted to the context of this country or to the context of our operation in this country. And that's where
I'm sure when that happens, you're like a hero, because you're the guy who can deal with headquarters and get them to reverse the decision, because they can't do it. You're the guy who can do it, so that makes a big difference.
It creates trust. Hero is perhaps a strong word, because usually I'm embarking the people as well in this journey, because of course they are going to hear my voice, but to hear the Japanese voice directly is also very strong, in fact, because they know me, they know sometimes that I can push on some topics. So my credibility is also my capacity to bring key staff. So they are doing at the same time as me. So I am trusting them, they are trusting me. We are collectively heroes, I would say.
What about coming up with ideas? You mentioned that many of them have been in the company for a very long time. And, after you've been in the same organization for a long time, you get sort of used to how things are and you accept how things are. But you come in with your experience from outside, and maybe you have ideas and you have maybe an angle or something you're thinking about whether you could do we haven't done before, or do it slightly differently. So you will always have that capacity. But what about getting ideas from them to have a think about how to do things better in Japan, rather than just we've always done it this way? Anything you've found works well to get ideas to bottom up from the team?
Actually, it's more the bottom-up ideas who did work than my own ideas. When I came to Japan by saying, okay, I have plenty of ideas, I think none of them worked at the end.
Really?
The way, so it's not the first time I'm joining it's not a new organization, but to some extent within Societe Generale, for me, it's completely new organization. And usually the way I'm working is that first I am listening. You have plenty of people who are directly in the action. I want to put their mark on very quickly and so on. Me, I am more, again, as I said before, I am analytical. So I need to absorb a lot of information in order to be able to do a restitution which makes sense. So I'm first listening, which I think they appreciate, because probably in other instances you could have people coming, which can work as well. Huh? I'm not saying that there is one method better than another. It's my method. So in fact, they did say a lot of things they did have a lot of ideas. I think the problem of Japanese people is that if they start to submit ideas, and if they get not a negative first opinion, but not that positive, they will feel that it's kind of a no. And they will retreat and say, okay, wakarimashita, and they will put aside. Here, it was not my stance at all, because I was in the same boat and them. So they actually said a lot of things. And it's what I said a little bit before. Based on that, I could see that we had a potential which we were not today really using, because not only us, but because Japan was when you compare Japan in 2021 and Japan today, there are a lot of things in our industry and globally which have changed.
Quite different.
Notably through the international environment, but not only. So I could see that what they were telling me was completely consistent with what is happening in Japan. And therefore there was a story which we could build. And from there, we managed to build a proposal, strategic proposal, which, yes, where I have added value. I know everybody at the headquarters, so I could go there and knock on the right door. But again, it was their proposal. And when we say, Japanese people prefer to stay in their comfort zones, but not really, frankly. If you leave the space, if you leave the time, it takes time. If you leave the space, if you leave the time, they came up with very good idea and they challenge themselves. But again, it's question of process. It's question of the way you do it. If you try a collective type of brainstorming or design thinking type of thing, no, it's not a good way. So it worked. It worked by listening, and it happens that at that time, 2021, 2022, there was a case. There was a case for business development, and 2 years later, we managed to bring the proposal to Paris, and we were validated as a strategic initiative by the group, and we are today the only strategic initiative of Societe Generale in APAC. And frankly, it's their proposal. It's their proposal.
That's a big deal. I guess also, when people see how you react to their ideas, the fact that you champion their ideas with the key people, and they get a win, that's very motivational, I imagine, for them to think, well, okay, maybe we can do more here. Maybe I can do more here. And that, I think, is a snowball effect too, doesn't it? It builds some momentum to keep going too.
Yes and no. Yes, theoretically, because it means that Societe Generale has decided to invest in Japan to develop. After that, you have the accountability coming to that with that, and it's a lot of pressure for the team. So we are currently starting the execution of this, what we call the Japan business plan internally. So we are starting this execution. So it creates also pressure. So yes, it's motivating, but it's also a lot of things where you need to report on a regular basis to top management in APAC and in Paris on a quarterly basis. So, well, it's going to take time before we really achieve what we want to achieve. It's quite ambitious, meaning that it's quite a lot of pressure today. So it's still keeping the teams under some pressure. It's that. So positive pressure, but pressure.
I was thinking that big picture level, like major group investment, that's a pretty big deal, right? But I was also thinking that underneath that, improvement of how we work here within the company, or smaller initiatives that don't cost a lot of money, but just thinking about your work and thinking about process and thinking about maybe client relationships too, when they see you championing their ideas. It doesn't have to be a big change the world idea. It could be a small idea. It could be something a bit local. But I'm guessing they see your support and their brain starts to think, well, what else can I do? Not something just at a macro level like that, but something at the more micro level, a bit internal. You can approve it. You have the capacity of approving it to go to Paris. And I think they're probably more encouraged to bring these things up to you locally as well.
It's true. After that, when you touch about business opportunity, obviously, if you are talking to business people, they will be keen on proposing new ideas. When you talk about processes, it's a little bit more difficult to get innovation there because it's a very process-based country, and you have to trust the process. So it depends the area. You have a little bit more difficulties to extract innovation where it comes to changing and adapting the process. When I arrived, the corporate governance here was very stringent and very heavy because of environment, but at the point where it was not efficient anymore. It took 1.5 years to simplify to some extent it, and here it was more my experience than the proposal on the ground. So it's going to depend on the matter, but again, I have also example where they did propose micro things to change and actually it did work very well. Again, it's really a question of leaving time and space for them to express. And in that case, yes, they might come. But it depends on the domain of competence and the field and the area where you are looking for efficiency or improvement.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Leading is easy. Getting people to follow is the hard part. That is a great quote from Yogi Berra. Surprisingly, despite the complexities of leading here in Japan, everyone has to work it out by themselves. Foreign leaders want practical, applicable, expert advice. This is now available for the first time in history. Grab your copy of Japan Leadership Mastery on Amazon today and avoid the mystery, trial and error, especially the errors. And what about trust? You know, trust is important everywhere. And with your experience, what have you found has worked well to get people to trust you as the leader, to follow you? And, you know, I'm particularly thinking Japan, but you've had a broad career, different aspects in your career. What things work well, do you think, to get trust in you?
Here, I think everybody is different, so I'm really going to talk about the way I'm handling that. I think it's a lot for me, for the way I'm working, the way I'm functioning. It's a lot about lead by example. It's a lot about getting the respect. And if you are credible, if you got the respect, you will be trusted at the end. The trust will be there.
When you say lead by example, I mean, you're the boss, right? You're operating at the very highest level. So, you know, your role is quite different to what they're doing, division heads or section heads or whatever. So how do you lead by example when you are the boss?
If I take the example of when I was at risk, I was the boss as well, and in the market risk, I had at that time 1,000 people above me, so more than I have in Japan. For example, at risk, when you work for risk, you need to stand for your decision. So you need courage. And courage, it's not easy every day. It's courage, of course, in front of the business, but it's also with your own management. And this will very quickly be perceived by the team, whether you are courageous or not, whether you go to fight in the right way, of course, professionally speaking, or not. So that's typically the type of quality when you advise, when you take the time to listen to people, when you coach them, they will also appreciate and they will trust you. So there are different types of action which you can use, regardless of your level, in fact. They will always see some of your actions. So the question is how they will judge your actions. And if you embody some values or qualities, they will see it very quickly. And, so I'm not trying to make it up or to design a strategy to be trusted. I try to be authentic. The way I'm working, I have also weaknesses and things like that. Huh? But my strengths, I think, are reasoning quite well in some situation. And due to my risk background, the fact that I do not hesitate to stand for the team, to fight for them, to spend time, to explain, to do a lot of pedagogy, because risk topics are sometimes very complex. All this create, and I'm very analytical as well, meaning that I'm first I listen, and then I discuss, and then I decide. But first I listen. So it's these kind of things which have not been built for that purpose, but have actually worked quite well throughout my career.
When you talk about courage in your industry, there's usually a lot of money attached to the decision, you know. So it's not like a small, light decision. You're taking a decision that's got a lot of zeros attached to it. You need a lot of courage. And what about culture? Because you have the organizational umbrella culture over the whole world and how the organization wants it to run. And then we're in Japan, so you've got Japan culture. And then you have Bruno culture, you know, how you like things to run, your preference for things. What have you found works well to build a culture in Japan?
Our first, as I said, the group is here for 50 years. Japan is part of Societe Generale. So the culture of the group is already well developed. I have not brought in my luggage new culture type of things to the people here. So to some extent, I did not have to do a lot of job on this side. It's just to be consistent, to embody, to lead by example. We are back to that at the end. What are the core values of our culture? We have, I think it's very similar to any organization. The 4 values which have been promoted for the group for at least 10 years, I think they have not changed since then, are team spirit. You are not going to be surprised. Huh? Team spirit, commitment, engagement, and innovation. So people are used to it. You know what it means below. Commitments, engagement, you have courage, for example, standing somewhere. So provided that you are consistent and in line with this kind of values, of course, you add everything linked to diversity, inclusivity, and all this today. You don't need to do much, actually, because you have already good relay here of people who have been in your organization for 5, 10, 15 years, who are happy to work with the company and knows already how we should promote to new joiner, and we do have a few, all this value. So it's not, and if I see a behavior or a comment which go a little bit offside of what I believe should be within the culture, it's always for me a good occasion to get an exchange. It's always one-to-one. I never say this kind of comment in public. It's always one-to-one. No humiliation or no this type of exercise. It's completely outside any of what I believe in. And it's always a good occasion to remind and to exchange that. So you have to be just vigilant, in fact. The framework is here. You just need to make sure that when you have weak signals, which you have plenty, you don't wait for the strong signal because it's too late in general. So for me, it's more a question of vigilance to ensure that you keep the higher standards in terms of group culture.
And what about, say, I don't know whether the right word is culture or style or I'm not quite sure how to express it, but as I said, you have Bruno himself as the man who has a certain style. And, in some cases, for some leaders, it might be a very enhanced social series of activities for the organization, and lots of offsites or lots of, events or getting town halls. But for others, maybe not so much. Maybe it's work through the hierarchy, and it's work, and it's not much social. And there's a personal flavour that people bring to it as a leader. What's the personal flavour you bring to the leadership? Is it party time here at Societe Generale, or is it get to the desk and get to work? How's the flavour?
Alors, the first order, it's more get to the desk and get the work done. But with accountability, of course, that's for me, it's a key word, to be honest, transparent. Again, coming probably from maritime, I think about 25 years of risk, you don't get out of that completely safe. Safe. So, well, the problem, it's not a problem. I have my personality. You said, you are Bruno, who are you? I have my personality. My personality is more analytical. And to move on the space where you go for more social type of events like that, I'm doing it, but it's not the space where I am the most comfortable. However, it's very important for the team. So I'm not hesitating, but I will probably doing less than for people who have a lot of appetite for that. That being said, because I don't want to criticize myself too much, when I arrived, there have not been any offsite organized at the Exco, Manco, whatever you want to call it, level in Japan for how long people could remember.
Okay, that's a seriously long time. There's
So
probably long memories here.
Yes, there are very long memories for some of them. So I did organize the first one last year, knowing that this collective type of things are not obvious in Japan already, but I was helped by a local coach, who was very good. And actually, he did work very well. People really enjoyed it. And so I want to balance a little bit my comment, but it's true that my natural instinct is really to be in the analysis, to take decision, to drive, and I need to force a little bit myself to release sometime a little bit the pressure, but I'm missing a lot, so I'm able to take this balance. I'm able to take this balance.
I think you and I are very similar, Bruno. I'm an introvert at heart, and I struggle with sort of being, social and parties and those sort of things. So, but I have to keep reminding myself that that's me, and maybe that's what I like. But there's also the team, and people have different needs, and I do struggle a bit with that myself. I'm like, my natural inclination is to get back to work, keep working, forget about the parties. So I have to keep reminding myself, yes, it's good to have parties. In fact, we had Joe Hart, the global CEO, is here to run the Tokyo Marathon recently. So, so we had an evening out, a very nice Japanese meal with most of the team could make it. So we got together. We probably should do that more often. I felt, I probably don't do this enough. I should work a bit harder on this part, because for me, I'm very focused, like just work, and I forget about these things. So I was just seeing if you had any hints there for me to help myself out a little bit more.
I'm sorry. I think you're right. And on top of that, when we have such events, it's exactly what you said. We immediately say, it was a wonderful event. We should do more of that. And then you forget completely.
You think you get back to work, right?
Then back to work.
That's my problem.
But again, I'm back to the fact that I'm going through a lot of one-to-one discussions. So I'm not trying, because I am naturally, I think. I am vigilant when I start to see sign of people of perhaps it's a little bit too much, and they want to breathe a little bit. So I can see that, and in that case, I am able to adjust. But the problem is that I will wait for this weak signals, why I should theoretically
innovate,
initiate exactly on proactive way.
That's my problem too. I'm a bit too reactive. Joe's here, so we have the party. I didn't say let's have the party anyway. So I need to work on that in myself. You've been here 4 or 5 years now, right? So you've come in 2001. So you've got good experience about Japan. If one of your friends or colleagues called you up and said, hey, Bruno, I've been appointed to be the head of Japan for my organization, and they're sending me out there to run the team. You've been there, Bruno, you've done it. What would be some advice you'd give me to be an effective leader in Japan? What would you tell them?
I will probably repeat a little bit what I said at the very beginning. To get a training on cultural differences, I think is really crucial. Not a long one. It's amazing for just one day. Again, you are just touching the very surface of it, but you avoid really the biggest problem, and whether it's internally or externally as well. Towards clients. Here, the staff will train you very quickly, which is the second part of the advice. Listen. Listen to what the people are telling you. Sometimes it can be completely outside of your referential or outside of what you would do naturally, but they are in their country, so they know much better. So cultural training, listening first. Second, a lot of work.
Just on that, you also said, I think you said before, apart from the cultural training you got in Paris before you came, I think you said you also had a coach here was helping you as well in Japan.
The coach just for the one-off seminar.
For doing the offsite?
Offsite, when I was looking for the word.
I was just wondering whether you actually had a coach in Japan as well.
I don't have a coach in Japan.
All right, okay. Well, please, sorry, the second point was?
Second point is what I said. Spend time, invest time in one-to-one. It's the only way for you to pick up informations, to understand the dynamic of your team, because you will be able to have different versions from different people. And
how does that work, though, in reality? You're an extremely busy country head, you've got limited amount of time. It's a very, complex business, a lot of accountability, many moving parts. You've got a number of businesses here, not just one, you've got a number, right? Finding that time for that one-on-one, how does that work? How do you make that happen? Because it sounds, one-on-one, but I can imagine your schedule must be incredible. So how do you make that time?
It's a question of choice. It's a question of choice. If you believe, of course, sometimes some key events, important visitors from Paris and Hong Kong, or client requirements or events, you have to postpone, to cancel, and you put that the next week. But it's really a question of priority. And I put that as a priority. I have 16 direct reports.
How many?
16.
16? That is a lot of direct reports.
It's too much. Too many.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. That's incredible. And you're doing a lot of one-on-one. Wow.
Yes. Not all weekly, but most of them. Most of them.
And do you also sometimes go down a layer below them as well and talk to people at that level as well sometimes?
Not enough.
Not enough, yeah. Because
that's part of things I need to improve. Back to the way I'm very analytical. So there is an organization. I try to. So it's something when I do it, it's like events or specific events with the team. When I do it, I'm very happy to have done it because it was very useful to get a different angle or different views. But I'm not doing it enough. So. Not regular, not the same type of interaction, but yes, I advise a lot to do this kind of things, perhaps more casual at Palace Hotel Bar.
Good, that's a good spot.
For example.
That's a good spot, yeah.
Or at Izakaya in Tokyo Station. So, but not enough. I should do it enough. I should do it more, sorry. I should do it more. But so the one-to-one, you have no choice, frankly. If you don't do it, you start to be disconnected from the reality. It doesn't need to be 1 hour every week. Sometimes in 15, 20 minutes, all the things have been said, meaning that there is nothing much happening. But in plenty of instances, it was very useful to get this time secured, because it happens that something went on the table, and it was very good timing to discuss, actually. And on top of that, I'm using it as well to try to create a consensus for key decisions or sensitive decisions. So clear second advice on my side. And the third one is not always, but most of the time, trust the process. Trust the process.
Now that's interesting, because the industry you're in is highly regulated, very highly regulated, and there are very strict processes inside the industry which people have to follow, or there's big trouble with the regulator, right? So it naturally lends itself to process as an industry, I think, right? So when you talk about follow the process, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the regulatory process? You're talking about the internal processes?
More the routine or the type of process everybody is going to put in place in order to perform their work. We have this that outside.
Are you talking about the hierarchy, or what do you?
It's more routine or procedure type of things. It's really. I have few examples where I've tried to come up with a solution on a specific problem, and I see that something is not working. I speak to A, B, C, D, and individually it seems that it's okay, but globally it's not happening. And in that case, very often I said, okay, you have understood my stance, you have understood what I have in mind. I understand that the way I'm proposing it seems to be difficult. Take it, handle it the way you want, with the result you want. You have just my starting point and where I would like to achieve in the spirit. It's what also I call I trust the process. They will follow then their own way of doing things, which will not be necessarily accessible to you. But like if you were coming to work in France, sometime for people coming from abroad, it's not easy to understand the way French people are working together. I think it's the same here. And several times I said, okay, I push you the topic and
when you're
please handle.
Working in London, you're dealing with the English. That must have been challenging. If you think about the difference of the personalities of French people and English people. Any other advice you give the person? You come up with 3 really great points there. What about language? Should they learn Japanese?
Alors, yes and no. Alors, if they are particularly gifted in terms of, which is not my case, in terms of learning foreign language, yes. It's much better to have some interaction. On my side, I'm not gifted at all. You see my level of English after 7 years in London, so you can imagine. It's going to require much more in Japan. So if it is for professional reasons, I think it's, except if you stay very long time, frankly, I think it's a lot of time for not a lot of results. But if it is for leisure or for day-to-day life, but you need to be focused. To learn a language is not, even if you stay at a low level, it's a lot of work. I would advise definitively to do it, because you approach also a culture, you approach also the way people are talking, it's the way, reflect the way people are behaving and the way people are thinking. And when you understand at my very low level, the Japanese and the way the Japan language is structured, it's actually very interesting. On top of that, if you look at the history of the way it has evolved through time, it's very interesting. So I'm still learning Japanese. I'm still taking twice a week
very good.
Japanese lessons, which is still absolutely no success.
I don't know about that, but
that's a disaster.
But that consistency is impressive.
I haven't given up.
It's impressive.
And I really, you need to be curious. You need to have this intellectual curiosity. But if you want to touch a little bit deeper in the culture, to touch the language is I think
it's a window,
the best
isn't
way.
it? The language is a window into the culture. And
Exactly.
when you learn something of the language, you start to understand, okay, that's what's going on here.
The different level of language, very basic things already. The way of some words are used and the way they have been built. You understand plenty of things. Unfortunately, you're still not able to express them, or sometimes, and most of the time, to understand them. But at least when some people are trying to talk to me, but I have touched a little bit more of the Japanese culture than just hanging around and doing to a Japanese restaurant and visiting a shrine. But it's frankly, it takes time. It's an investment. Huh?
Well, I think also, one of the things we forget is that we turn up in Japan and we are illiterate. We can't read.
No.
If I go to Europe, I can read the script. Maybe I don't know the language, but a lot of it's Latin-based, so I can guess, this is probably coming from this Latin word. I can get some feeling for it, or look up the dictionary quite easily. Japanese, not so easy. You've got to at least have katakana, if you're going to the supermarket or the shopping, you've got to at least be able to read some katakana. So there is that extra. And I notice it when I go to Korea, because I can read Japanese. I've been here a long time, no problem. And then I get comfortable. And I go to Korea and I can't read anything. It's like, oh, that's right. That's what it's like for foreigners when they first come to Japan. They can't read any damn thing, And you remind yourself the difficulty is quite high. What about your definition of leadership? How would you define your definition of leadership?
It's not an easy question because you can put, and actually people are putting everything in leadership. Can be about getting a vision, about empowering people, about promoting collaborative work. So it can be anything. And you can play on a lot of different skills to achieve all that. It can be emotional intelligence, it can be decision-making process, it can be communication skills, it can be bringing people to outside event, it can be anything. So for me, it's more a kind of toolbox, again, based on your strengths. You have always this dilemma about should you more take time to make your strengths even stronger, or should you correct your weaknesses?
Yes, exactly.
For me, provided that the weaknesses are not too much, so that at the point where it starts to be an handicap, disability, we should more focus on strengths, frankly. You get a much better return. So when you mix all that together, it's really going to depend on what is your role, what is expected from you, what is your environment, what are the people. So for me, leadership is really capacity to adapt. And then you have the toolbox. But for me, leadership is adaptation to your environment.
Very good. Well, Bruno, thank you very much.
Thank you for your
It's been
time.
a fantastic
Thank you for your
talk.
question.
Thank you very much. So, please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.